25:24. Rita Seeker's Scoop. Everybody got up late on Boxing Day. The Gryffindor's common room was much quieter than it had ever lately. Winnie yawned, punctuating the lazy conversation. Hermione's hair was bushy again. She confessed to Harry that she has used liberal account of Slicker's hair potion on it for the ball, but it's way too much border to do every day. She said matter of factly, snatching up curing Crookshanks behind the ear. Ron and Hermione seemed to have reached an unspoken agreement not to discuss their argument. They were being quite friendly to each other, though oddly formal. Ron and Harry wasted no time in telling Hermione about the conversation they had overheard between Madame Maxim and Hagrid. But Hermione didn't see to find the news that Hagrid was half giant, nearly as shocking as Ron did. Well, I thought he must be, she said, struggling. I knew he couldn't be pure giant because they are about 20 feet tall, but honestly, all this hysteria about giants, they can't all be horrible. It's the same sort of prejudice that people have towards werewolves. It's just bigotry, isn't it? Ron asked, as though he would have liked to reply straightening, but perhaps he didn't want another row, because he content himself with shaking his head disbelievingly while Harmony wasn't looking. If it was time now to think of the homework they had neglected during the first week of the holiday, everybody seemed to be feeling rather flat now that Christmas was over. Everybody except Harry, that is, who was staring once again to feel slightly nervous. The trouble was that February and 24th looked a lot closer from this side of Christmas, and he still hadn't done anything about working out of the clue inside the golden egg. He therefore started talking the egg out of his tongue every time he went up to the dormitory, opening it and listening intently, hoping that this time it would make some sense. He strained to think what she sound remained him or apart from 30 musical songs. But he had never heard anything else like it. He closed the egg, shook it vigorously, and opened it again to see if the sound had changed, but it hadn't. He tried asking the egg questions, chatting over all the welling above, but nothing happened. He even threw the egg across the room, though he hadn't really expected that to help. Harry had not forgotten the hint that Cedric had given him, but his less than friendly feeling towards Cedric just now meant that he was keen not to take his help if he could avoid it. In any case, it seemed to him that if Cedric had really wanted to give Harry a hand, he could have been a lot more explicit. Harry had told Cedric exactly what was coming in the first task, and Cedric's idea of a fairy exchange had been to tell Harry to take a bath. Well, he didn't need that sort of rubbish help, not from someone who kept walking down corridors hand in hand with the cow. Anyway, and so the first day of the new term arrived, and Harry set off to lesson big down book parchment and quill as usual, but also with the lasting worth of egg heavy in his stomach, as though he were carrying that ground with him too. Snow was still thick on the grounds, and the greenhouse windows were covered in condensation, so thick that they couldn't see out of them in herbology. Nobody was looking forward to care of magical creature much in this weather, though, as Ron said, the Scrooge would probably warm them up nicely, either by chasing them or blasting off so forcefully that Hagrid's cabin would catch fire. When they arrived at Hagrid's cabin, however, they found an elderly witch with closely cropped grey hair and a very prominent chin standing before his front door. Hurry up now, the bell rang 5 minutes ago, she barked at them as they struggled towards her through the snow. Who are you? Said Ron, staring at her. Where is Hagrid? My name is Professor Grubbly Plank, he said briskly. I'm your temporary care of magical creatures teacher. Where is Hagrid? Harry repeated loudly. He is indisposed, said Professor Grubbly Plunk shortly. Soft and unpleasant laughter reached Harry's ear. He turned Draco Malfoy and the rest of the Slytherins were joining the class. All of them looked gleeful and none of them looked surprised to see Professor Grubbly Plank. This way, please, said Professor Gubbly Plank, and she strode off around the paddock where the Baxbottom horse were shivering. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed her, looking back over their shoulders at Hagrid's cabin. All the curtains were closed. Was Hagrid in there alone and ill? What's wrong with Hagrid? Harry said, hurrying to catch up with Professor Gubbly-Plank. Never you mind, she said as though she thought he was being nosy. I don't mind though, said Harry hotly. What's up with him? Professor Gubbly Plank acted as though she couldn't hear him. She led them past the paddock where the huge Baxbottom horses were standing, huddled against the cold, and toward a tree at the edge of the forest where a large and beautiful unicorn was tethered. Many of the girls wooed at the sight of the unicorn. Oh, it's so beautiful, whispered Lavender Brown. How did she get it? They're supposed to be really hard to catch. The unicorn was so brightly white it made the snow all around look grey. It was pawing the ground nervously with her golden hoofs and throwing back its horn head. Boys kept back, but Professor Grubbly Plank, throwing out an arm and catching Harry hard in the chest, preferred the woven statue unicorn. Girls to the front and approached with care. Come on, easy girls, take. He and the girls walked slowly forward toward the unicorn, leaving the boys standing near the paddock fence, watching. The moment Professor Grubbly Plank was out of earshot, he turned to Ron. What do you reckon wrong with him? You don't think or script? Oh, he hasn't been at Potter. If that's what you are thinking, said Malfoy softly. No, he's just too ashamed to show his big ugly face. What do you mean? Said Harry sharply. Malfoy put his hand inside the pocket of his robe and pulled out a full page of newsprint. There you go, he said. Hate to break it to you, Potter. It's rigged. And Harry snatched the page, unfolded it, and read it with Ron, Seamus, Dean, and Neville looking over his shoulder. It was an article topped with a picture of Hagrid looking extremely shifty. Dumbledore's giant mistake. Albus Dumbledore, eccentric headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, has never been afraid to make controversial staff appointment. Right, Rita Seeker, special correspondent. In September of this year, he hired Alistair Mad Eye Moody, the notorious Jinx Happy ex-Auror, to teach defense against the dark art, a decision that caused many raise eyebrow at the Ministry of Magic. Even Moody's well-known habit of attacking anybody who make a sudden movement in his presence. Mad Eye Moody, however, looked responsible and kindly when sat beside the part human Dumbledore employs to teach care of magical creatures. A rebus Hagrid, who admitted to being expelled from Hogwarts in the third year, has enjoyed the position of gamekeeper at the school ever since, a job secured for him by Dumbledore. Last year, however, Hagrid used his mysterious influence over the headmaster to secure the additional post of care of magical creatures teacher. They were the head of many better qualified candidates. An alarming large and furious looking man, Hagrid has been using his newfound authority to terrify the student in his care with a succession of horrified creatures. While Dumbledore turned a blind eye, Hagrid has maimed several pupils during a series of lessons that many admit of to being very frightening. I was attacked by a hippogriff, and my friend Vincent Grab got a bad bit of a flowworm, said Draco Malfoy, a fourth-year student. Well, all hate Hagrid, but we are just too scared to say anything. Hagrid has no intention of choosing his champion of intimidation. However, in a conversation with a Daily Prophet reporter last month, he admitted breeding creature he has dubbed fast-ended screws, highly dangerous cross between manticores and fire crabs. Creation of new breed of magical creature is of course an activity usually close observed by the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creations. Hagrid, however, considered himself to be above such petty restrictions. I was just having some fun, he says, before hastily changing the subject. As if this were not enough, the Daily Prophet has now unearthed evidence that Hagrid is not, as he has always pretended, a pure-blood wizard. He is not, in fact, even pure human. His mother, we can exclusively reveal, is none other than the giantess Fried Wolfa, whose whereabouts are currently unknown. Bloodthirsty and brutal, the giant brought themselves to the point of extinction by warring amongst themselves during the last century. The handful that remained joined the rank of he who must not be named, and were responsible for some of the worst mass smuggle killing in his region of terror. While many of the giants who served he who must not be named were killed by others working against the dark side, Fried Wolf was not among them. It is possible she escaped one of the giant communities still existing in foreign mountain ranges. If his antics during care of magical creature lessons are any guide, however, Frodolf's son appeared to have inherited her brutal nature. In a bizarre twist, Hagrid is reputed to have developed a close friendship with the boy who brought around you know whose fall from power, thereby driving Hagrid's own mother, like the rest of you know whose supporters, into hiding. Perhaps Harry Potter is unaware of the unpleasant truth about the large friend, but Albus Dumbledore surely has a duty to ensure that Harry Potter, along with his fellow student, is warned about the danger of associating with pirate giants. Harry finished reading and looked up at Ron, whose mouth was hanging open. How did she find out? He whispered, but that wasn't what was bothering Harry. What do you mean we all hate Hagrid? Harry spat at Malfoy. What's the rubbish about him? He pointed at Grab, getting a bad bite of a flawed worm. They haven't even got teeth. Grab was sniggering, apparently very pleased with himself. Well, I think this should put an end to the Off's teaching career, said Malfoy, his eyes glinting half giant, and there was a thinking he had just swallowed a bottle of scale grown when he was young. None of the mummies and daddies are going to like this at all. They'll be worried he'll eat their kids. Haha. You, are you paying attention over there? Professor Grubbly Plank's voice carried over to the boy. The girls were all clustered around the unicorn now, stroking it. Harry was so angry that the Daily Prophet's article shook in his hands as he turned to stare unseeingly at the unicorn whose many magical properties Professor Grubbly Plank was now enumerating in a loud voice so that the boy could hear too. I hope she stayed that woman, said Parvati Patil when the lesson had ended and they were all hiding back to the castle for lunch. That's more what I thought care of magical creatures would be like. Proper creatures like unicorn, not monsters. What about Hagrid? Said Harry angrily as they went up the stairs. What about him? Said Parvati in a hard voice. He can still be gamekeeper, can't he? Parvati had been very cool toward Harry since the ball. He supposed that the ought to have paid her a bit more attention, but she seemed to have had a good time all the same. She was certainly telling anybody who would listen that she had made arrangement to meet the boy from Buxbottom in Hogsmeade on the next weekend trip. This was a really good lesson, said Hermione as they entered the great hall. I didn't know half of the things Professor Glubbly told us about unicorn. Look at this, Harry sneered, and he showed a Daily Prophet article under Hermione's nose. Hermione's mouth fell open as she read. Her reaction was exactly the same as Ron's. How did that horrible seeker woman find out? You don't think Hagrid told her? No, said Harry, leading the way over the Gryffindor's table and throwing himself into a chair furious. He never ever told us, did he? I reckon she was so mad he wouldn't give her lots of horrible stuff about me. She went ferreting around to get him back. Maybe she heard him telling Madame Maxim at the ball, said Hermione quietly. We had have seen her in the garden, said Ron. Anyway, she's not supposed to come into the school anymore. Hagrid and Dumbledore banned her. Maybe she's got an invisibility claw, said Harry, ladling chicken casserole onto the plate and splashing it everywhere in his anger. Sort of thing she had to, isn't it? Hide in a bus's lighting to the people. Like you and Ron, did you mean? Said Hermione. We weren't trying to hear him, said Ron indigently. We didn't have any choice. The stupid brat talking about his giantness mother where anyone could have heard him. We have got to go and see him, said Harry, this evening after deviation. Tell him we want him back. You do want him back, he thought at Hermione. I will not. I'm not going to pretend it didn't make a nice change. Have a proper care of magical creature lesson for once. I do want Hagrid back, of course I do, Hermione added hastily, crawling under Harry's furious stare. So that evening after dinner, the three of them left the castle once more and went down through the frozen ground to Hagrid's cabin. They knocked, and Fang's booming bark answered. Hagrid isn't us, Harry shouted, pounding on the door. Open up. Hagrid didn't answer. They could hear Fang scratching at the door, weighing, but he didn't open. They hammered it on for 10 more minutes. Ron even went and banged on one or of the other windows, but there was no response. What's he avoiding us for? Hermione said when they had finally given up and were walking back to the school. He surely doesn't think we had cared about him being half giant. But it seemed that Hagrid did care. They didn't see a sign of him all week. He didn't appear at a staff table at mealtime. They didn't see him going about his gamekeeper's duty on the grounds, and Professor Grubbly Plank continued to take care of magical creature classes. Malfoy was gloating at every possible opportunity. Missing your half-breed pal, he kept whispering to Harry whenever there was a teacher around, so that he was safe from Harry's retaliation. Missing the elephant man, there was a Hogsmeade visit halfway through January. Hermione was very surprised that Harry was going to go. I just thought you had want to take advantage of a common room being quiet, she said. Really get to work on the egg. Oh, I reckon I have got pretty good idea what it's about now. Harry lied. Have you really? Said Hermione, looking impressed. Well done. Harry inside gave a guilty scream, but he ignored them. He still had 5 weeks to work out of that egg clue, after all, and that was ages. Whereas if he went down Hogsmeade, he might run into Hagrid and get a chance persuaded him to come back. He, Ron, and Hermione left the castle together on Saturday and set off through the cold, wet ground toward the gates. As they passed the drumstick ship moored in the lake, they saw Whitcomb emerge into the deck, dressed in nothing but swimming trunk. He was very skinny indeed, but apparently a lot taller than he looked because he climbed up onto the side of the ship, stretched his and divide right into the lake. He's mad, said Harry, staring at Crumb's dead dark red as it dropped onto into the middle of the lake. It must be freezing. It's January. It's a lot colder where he come from, said Harmony. I suppose it feel quite warm to him. Yeah, but there's still the giant squid, said Ron. He didn't sound anxious of anything, he sounded helpful. Hermione noticed his tone of voice and forward. He's really nice, you know, she said. He's not all like you had think, coming from Dumpstein. He likes it much better here, he told me. Ron said nothing. He hadn't measured Victor Crumb since the ball, but Harry had found out a miniature arm under his bed on Boxing Day which had looked very much as though it had been snapped off a small model figure wearing Bulgarian quitch robes. Harry kept his eyes skinned for a sign of Hagrid all the way down the slushy high street and suggested a visit to the Three Broomsticks once he had ascertained that Hagrid was not in any of the shops. The pub was as crowded as ever, but one quiet look around at all the table told Harry and Hagrid wasn't there. Heart sinking, he went up to the bar and Ron and Hermione ordered three butterbeer from Madame Rosemarta and thought gloomily that he might just as well have stayed behind and listened to the egg boiling after all. Doesn't he ever go into the office? Hermione whispered. Suddenly, look, pointed into the mirror behind the bar, and Harry saw Ludo Bagman reflect here, sitting into shadowy corner with a bunch of goblin. Bagman was talking very fast in a low voice. Goblins, all of whom had their arms crossed and were looking rather menacing. It was indeed odd. Harry thought that Bagman was here at the Three Broomstick on a weekend when there was no Triwizard event and therefore no judging to be done. He watched Bagman in the mirror. He was looking stained again, quite as stained as he had that night in the forest before the dark masks had appeared. But just the Bagman glanced over the bar, saw Harry, and stood up in a moment. In a moment. Harry heard him say brusquely to the goblin, and Bagman hurried through the pub toward Harry, his boyish grin back to the place. Harry, he said, how are you? Been hoping to run into you. Everything going all right? Fine, thanks, said Harry. Wonder if I could have a quick private word, Harry, said Bagman eagerly. You couldn't give us a moment, you two, could you? Okay, said Ron, and he and Hermione went off to find a table. Bagman led Harry along the bar to the end for tears from Madame Rosemarta. Well, I just thought I had congratulate you again on your splendid performance against that hotel, Harry, said Bagman. Really superb. Thanks, said Harry, but he knew this couldn't be all that Bagman wanted to say because he could have congratulated Harry in front of Ron and Hermione. Batman didn't seem in any particular rush to spill the beans, though Harry saw him glance into the mirror over the bar and the goblins who were all watching him and Harry in silence through their dark slanting eyes. Absolute nightmare, said Bagman to Harry in an undertone, noticing Harry watching the goblins too. Their English isn't too good. It's like being back with all the Bulgarian at the Pitch World pub. But at least they use sign language another human could recognize. This lot keep gobbling in the Goblet book, and I only know one word of Gobble book. Bloodwick means tax. I don't like to use it in case they think I am threatening them. He gave a sort of booming laugh. Do you what? Harry said, noticing how the goblin were still watching Batman very closely. Well, said Batman, looking suddenly nervous. Uh, they are looking for Barry Crouch. Why are they looking for him here? Said Harry. He is at the ministry in London, isn't he? As a matter of fact, I have no idea where he is, said Bagman. He's sort of stuff coming to work. Been absent for a couple of weeks now. Young Percy, his assistant, says he's ill. Apparently, he's just been sending instruction in a by owl, but Would you mind not mentioning that to anyone, Harry? Because Rita Seeker's still poking around everywhere she can. I'm willing to be bet she worked up Barty's illness into something sinister. Probably say he's gone missing like Bertha Jorking. Have you heard anything about Bertha Jorking? Harry asked. No, said Bagman, looking strained again. I have got people looking for course. About time, thought Harry, and it as all very strange. She definitely arrived in Albania because she met her second cousin there, and then she left cousin's house to go south and see an aunt, and she seemed to have vanished without trace on a route blooded if I can see where she's got to go. She doesn't seem the type to elope, for instance, but still, are we doing talking about goblins and Bertha Jorking? I really wanted to ask you, he lowered his voice, how are you getting on with your golden egg? Not bad, Harry said untruthfully. Batman seemed to know he wasn't being honest. Listen, Harry, he said, still in a very low voice. I feel very bad about all this. You were thrown into the tournament, you didn't volunteer for it, and if his voice was so quiet now, Harry had to lean closer to listen. If I can help at all, a prod in the right direction. I have taken a liking to you. The way you got past that dragon, well, just say the word. Harry stared upon into Bagman's rounded, rosy face and his wide blue eyes. We are supposed to work out the clues alone, aren't we? He said carefully to keep his voice casual and sound as though he was accusing the head of the Department of Magical Games and Sport of breaking the rule. Well, well, yes, said Bagman impatiently. But come on, Harry. We all want Hogwarts victory, don't we? Have you offered Cedric help? Harry said. The smallest of frowns seized Bagman's smooth face. No, I haven't. He said, I will. I say, I have taken a liking to you just though I had offered. Well, thanks, said Harry, but I think I'm nearly there with the egg. Couple more days about should crack it. He wasn't entirely sure why he was refusing Bagman's help, except that Bagman was almost a stranger to him, and accepting his assistant would feel somehow much more like cheating than asking advice from Ron, Harmony, or Cyrus. Batman looked almost offended, but couldn't say much more as Fred and George turned up at the point. Hello, Mr. Bagman, said Fred brightly. Can you buy your drink? No, said Bagman with a last disappointing glance at Harry. No, thank you, boys. Fred and George looked quite as disappointed as Bagman, who was surviving Harry as though he had let him down badly. Well, I must dash, he said. Nice seeing you all. Good luck, Harry. He hurried out of the pub and Goblin all slid off their chairs and excited after him. Harry went to rejoin Ron and Hermione. What did he want? Ron said the moment Harry had sat down. He offered to help me with the golden egg. Said Harry, he shouldn't be doing that, said Hermione, looking very shocked. He's one of the judges, and anyway, you have already worked it out, haven't you? Nearly, said Harry. Well, I don't think Dumbledore would like to if he knew Bagman was trying to persuade you to cheat, said Hermione, still looking deeply disapproving. I hope he is trying to help Cedric as much. He's not, I asked, said Harry. Who cares if Diggory is getting help? Said Ron. Harry privately agreed. Those goblins didn't look very friendly, said Hermione, sipping her butterbeer. What were they doing here? Looking for Crouch, according to Bagman, said Harry. He's still ill, hasn't he, into work? Maybe Percy's poisoning him, said Ron. Probably thinks if Crouch snuff, it will be made head of Department of International Magical Cooperation. Hermione gave on, don't joke about things like that, look, and said, funny goblin, looking for Mr. Crouch. They are normally deal with the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Crouch can speak lots of different languages though, said Harry. Maybe they need an interpreter. Worrying about poor ickling goblin. Now are you? Ron asked Hermione, thinking it started up SPUG or something, Society for the Protection of Ugly Goblins. Ha ha ha, said Hermione sarcastically. Goblins don't need protection. Haven't you been listening to what Professor Bean was telling about us, Goblin Rebellion? No, said Harry and Ron together. Well, they are quite capable of dealing with wizards, said Hermione, taking another sip of butterbeer. They are very clever. They are not like house elves who never stick up for themselves. Oh, oh, said Ron, staring at the door. Rita Seeker had just entered. She was wearing banana yellow robes today. Her long nails were pointing shocking pink, and she was accompanied by her punchy photographer. She brought drinks and she and the photographer made their way through the crowd to the table nearby. Harry, Ron and Hermione glaring at her and she approached. She was walking fast and looking very satisfied about something. Didn't seem very keen to talk to us, did he? Bonzo. Now, why would that do you and what's going doing with the pack of goblin in tow anyway? Showing them the side. What nonsense, he was always a bad liar, reckon something up. Think we should do a bit digging. Disgrace, exceed of magical games and sport, Ludo Bagman. Snappy Sarato sentence Bonzo. We just need to find story to fit in. Trying to ruin someone else's life, said Harry loudly. A few people looked around. Rita Seeker's eyes widened behind her jeweled spectacles, and she saw who had spoken. Harry, she said, beaming. How lovely. What don't you come and try? I wouldn't come near you with a 10-foot broomstick, said Harry furiously. What did you do that to Hagrid for? Rita Seeker raised her heavily penciled eyebrow. Our reader have a right to the truth, Harry. I am merely doing my. Who cares if he is half giant? Harry shouted. There is nothing wrong with him. The whole pub had gone very quiet. Madame Rose Marta was staring over from behind the bar, apparently oblivious the fact that flagon she was filling with a maid was overflowing. Rita Seeker's smile flickered very slightly, but she hitched it back almost at once. She snapped open her crocodile skin handbag, pulled out the white coat quill, and said, How about giving me an interview about the Hagrid you know? Harry, the man behind the muscles. You are unlike friendship and the reason behind it. Would you call him as a father substitute? Hermione stood up very abruptly, her butterbeer clutch in her hand, and though it were grinder. You horrible woman, she said through glittered teeth. You don't care, do you? Anything for a story, and anyone will do. One day, even Ludo Bagman, sit down, you silly little girl, and don't talk about things you don't understand, said Rita Seeker coldly, her eyes hardening as they fall on Hermione. I know things about Ludo Bagman that will make your hair curl. Not that it need it, she added, eyeing Hermione's bushy hair. Let's go, Hermione. Come on, Harry, Ron. They left. Many people were staring at them as they went. Harry glanced back as they reached the door. Rita Seeker's white coat quill was out. It was zooming backward and forward over a piece of parchment on table. She'll be after you next, Hermione, said Ron in a low and worried voice as they walked quickly back up the street. Let her try, said Hermione definitely. She was shakingly with rage. I'll show her, silly little girl, am I? Oh, I'll get her back from this first. Harry, said then Hagrid, you don't want to go up Stating Rita Seeker, said Ron nervously. I'm serious. Hermione, she'll dig up something on you. My parents don't read the Daily Prophet. She can't scare me into hiding, said Hermione, now striding along so fast that it was all Harry and Ron could do to keep up with her. The last time Harry had seen Hermione in a range like this, she had hit Draco Malfoy around the face, and Hagrid isn't hiding anymore. He should never have let that excuse for human being upset him. Come on, breaking into a run, she led them all the way back up the road, through the gates, flanked by winged board, and up through the grounds to Hagrid's cabin. The curtain was still drawn, and they could hear Frank barking as they approached. Hagrid, Hermione shouted, pounding on his foot door. Hagrid, can't enough. We know you are there. Nobody cares if your mom was a giantess. Hagrid, you can't let that foul Skeeter's women do this, you. Hagrid, get out there. You are just being. The door opened. Hermione said, about to and then stopped very suddenly because she found herself face to face not with Hagrid but with Albus Dumbledore. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly, smiling down at them. We wanted to see Hagrid," said Hermione in a rather small voice. "Yes, I summarize as much," said Dumbledore, his eyes twinkling. "Why don't you come in?" Um, okay, said Hermione. She, Ron, and Harry went into the cabin. Frank launched himself upon Harry the moment he entered, barking madly and trying to lick his ear. Harry fended off Frank and looked around. Hagrid was sitting in his table where there were two large mugs of tea. He looked a real mess. His face was blotchy, his eyes swollen, and he had gone to the other extreme where his hair was concerned, far from trying to make it behave. It now looked like a wig of a tangled wire. "Hi, Hagrid," said Harry. Hagrid looked up. "No," he said in a very hoarse voice. "No tea, I think," said Dumbledore, closing the door behind Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Drawing out his wand and treading it, a revolving tea tray appeared in the mid-air along with a plate of cake. Dumbledore had the tray onto the table, and everybody sat down. There was a slight pause, and then Dumbledore said, "Did you by any chance hear what Miss Granger was shouting, Hagrid?" Hermione went slightly pink. Dumbledore smiled at her and continued. "Hermione, Harry, and Ron still seemed to want to know you, judging by the way they were attempting to break down the door. Of course, we still want to know you," Harry said, suddenly the Skeeter's cow. "Sorry, Professor," he added quietly, looking at Dumbledore. Have gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said, Harry," said Dumbledore, twiddling his thumb and staring at the ceiling. "All right," said Harry sheepishly. "I just mean, Hagrid, how could you think we had cared what that woman wrote about you?" Two fat tears leaked out of Hagrid's little back eye and fell slowly into the tangled beard. "Living proof of what I have been telling you," Hagrid and Dumbledore still looking carefully up at the ceiling. "I have shown you the letter from the countless parents who remember you from their own days here, telling me in no uncertain term that what if I sacked you, they would have something to say about it." "Not all of them," said Hagrid harshly. "Not all of them want me to stay. Really, Hagrid, if you are holding out for universal popularity, I'm afraid you will be in the cabin for a very long time," said Dumbledore, now peering sternly over a half-moon spectacles. "Not a week has passed since I became headmaster of this school when I haven't had at least one owl complaining about the way I run it. But what should I do? Barricade myself in my study and refuse to talk to anybody?" "Yeah, you are not half blind," said Hagrid croakily. "Hagrid, look what I have got for relatives," Harry said furiously. "Look at the Dursleys." "An excellent point," said Professor Dumbledore. "My own brother, Aberforth, was prosecuted by the practicing inappropriate charm on a goat. It was all over the paper, but did Aberforth hide? No, he did not. He held his head high and went about his business as usual. Of course, I'm not entirely sure he can read, so that may not have been bravery. Come back to take Hagrid, said Hermione quietly. Please come back. We really miss you. Hagrid gulped more tear, licked out, down and cheek and into his tangled beard. Dumbledore stood up. I refuse to accept your resignation, Hagrid, and I expect you come back at work on Monday. He said you will join me for breakfast at 8:30 in the Great Hall. No excuses. Good afternoon to you all. Dumbledore left the cabin, pausing only to scratch Fang's ear. When the door had shut behind him, Hagrid began to sob into his dustinly-sized hand. Hermione kept patting his arm, and at last Hagrid looked up, his eyes very red indeed, and said, Great man, Dumbledore, great man. Yea, he is, said Ron. Can I have one of this cake, Hagrid? Help yourself, said Hagrid, wiping his eyes on the back of the hand. He's right, of course, you're all right. I've been stupid. My old dad would be ashamed of the way I have been behaving. More tears leaked out, but he wiped them away more forcefully and said, Never show you a picture of my old dad, have I? Here, Hagrid got up, went over to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a picture of short wizard with Hagrid's crinkled back eyes. Beaming, he sat on top of Hagrid's shoulder. Hagrid was a good 7 or 8 feet tall, judging by the apple tree behind him. But his face was beardless, young, round and smooth. He looked hardly older than 11. That was taken just after I got into Hogwarts, Hagrid croaked. Dad was dead, muffled. Though I might not be a wizard, she caused my mom. Well, anyway, course I never was great shaken at magic really. But at least he never saw me expel, died, see in me second year. Dumbledore was the one who stuck up for me after Dad went, got me the gamekeeper job. Trust people, he does, give a second chance. That what set him apart from other heads. See, he'll accept anyone at Hogwarts long as they got the talent. Most people can turn out okay even if their families weren't. Well, all that respectable, but some don't understand what that there is some who had always hold against you. There is some who had even pretend they just had big bone rather than stand up and say, I am why I am. I am not ashamed. I never ashamed. My old dad used to say, there is some will hold it against you, but they are not worth bothering with. And he was right. I have been an idiot. I am not bothering with her no more. I promise you that. Big bones. I'll give her big bones. Harry, Ron, and Hermione look at one another nervously. Harry would rather have taken 50 blast-ended squibs for a walk than admit to Hagrid that he had overheard him talking to Madame Maxim, but Hagrid was still talking, apparently unaware that he had said anything odd. You know what, Harry? He said, looking up from the photograph of his father, his eyes very bright when I first met you. You remind me of a bit, Mom and Dad gone, and you was feeling like you wouldn't fit in Hogwarts, remember, not sure you were really up to it. And now look at you, Harry, school champion. He looked at Harry for a moment and then said very seriously, You know what? I love Harry. I do love Harry to win. I really would. I hadn't shown them all. You don't have to be pure blood to do it. You don't have to be ashamed of what you are. It had showed Dumbledore, the one who had got the right letting anyone in as long as they can do magic. How you doing with that egg, Harry? Great, said Harry, really great. Hagrid's miserable face broke into wide, whitely smile. That's my boy. You show them, Harry. You showed them, beat them all. Lying to Hagrid wasn't quite like lying to anyone else. Harry went back to the castle later and afternoon with Ron and Hermione, unable to banish the image of happy expression Hagrid whiskery face as he had imagined Harry winning the tournament. The incomprehensible ache widened more heavily than ever on Harry's conscience that evening. By and by the time he had got into bed, he had made up his mind. It was the time to sell his pride and see if Cedric Hint was worth anything. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.